Week 1 is in the books, and whether you won or lost your fantasy matchup, everything is going to be fine. And we now need to look towards week number 2 and set our fantasy lineups. In today's video, I'm going to help you do exactly that. We're going to break down every single matchup from Thursday Night Football all the way up until the doubleheader on Monday Night Football. And I'll be telling you guys where I think you should start or sit the wide receivers in every single game, as well as how I feel they will finish at the end of the week. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you are new to the channel and you do have been enjoying, then please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. So without further ado, let's get into today's video. We begin with Thursday Night Football. The left hands up. Who are we? The Commanders at the Green Bay Packers. Now, Terry McLaurin last week was silent like the night before Christmas in week number 1. He had just 2 receptions on 4 targets for 27 yards. Last week, I spoke about how I was a little bit worried about Terry McLaurin coming out the gate slow due to the holdout. That was something that we saw with CeeDee Lamb last season, and that was exactly what happened in week number 1 with a good matchup up against the Giants. This week, he faces a Packers defense that had the Lions offense looking like they were quarterbacked by Nathan Peterman. So I am still pretty worried about Terry McLaurin this week, and I think you should be as well. I am not saying that he is magically going to be flushed down the toilet and be useless in this offense. I'm not saying that if you drafted Terry McLaurin, you're a complete and utter bozo, but in week number 2, it might still take time for that connection with Jaden and him to gel, for them to rekindle. I know the bounce back will come in due time. This game does have the second highest Vegas total on the week, so I think this could be the matchup for it. Terry McLaurin is a high-end wide receiver 3 for me. Debo turned back the clock to 2021 and went nuclear up against the Giants as the wide receiver 6 in PPR, 7 receptions on 10 targets for 77 yards, as well as 1 rush for 19 yards and a touchdown. We did see these flashes, though, of Debo Samuel last season, and then he went back to being no bueno, so I wouldn't put all of my stock into Debo Samuel just sticking as this guy, and I won't overreact to week number 1 and magically crown Debo Samuel, but he definitely does deserve some praise for what he did. And if him and Terry McLaurin are in a battle on your team, which one do you start? I would still lean with Terry, but I do honestly think Debo Samuel might feel a lot safer in your lineup. For Noah Brown, he played the third most snaps out of the wide receivers with 47% on the Commanders. He had just 3 targets and is dealing with a knee injury. He is expected to play, but unless you're in like a 38-team league, no one probably even has this man rostered, and you should be keeping it that way. For the Green Bay Packers, Romeo Doubs led the team in snaps with 97%, followed by Golden at 66%, Wicks at 63%, and Jaden Riley-Reed at 51%. Jaden Reed was the leader in the clubhouse in fantasy points, and Doubs came in second, with Golden scoring just 3.6 fantasy points in PPR. I like Golden and believe that he will make strides and he will get better. I wouldn't just cut him like a bad habit instantly after 1 game. But as of right now, this offense is still operating the Oprah Winfrey offense, meaning that you get the ball, you get the ball, you all get the ball. Love throws the ball to everyone. With how things stand right now, all 3 of the Packers wide receivers on your screen right now, I don't feel comfortable playing any of them. Now, any of them could have a big game here, because again, the Vegas total would indicate that this is going to be a higher scoring matchup. But ultimately, in week 2, when there's no buys, no significant injuries, you don't need to get cute playing any of these Packers wide receivers. Next up, we move to the 1 p.m. slate on Sunday with the Cleveland Browns at the Baltimore Ravens. Now, we'll start off here with the easier team to break down, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. Zay Flowers shushed me and all of the haters in week 1. Wide receiver 1 finished with 7 receptions on 9 targets for 143 yards and a touchdown, as well as 2 rushes for 8 yards. Flowers is the clear number 1 wide receiver on this team, which was always going to be the case. But Zay Flowers does have that past of doing the disappearing act Houdini style after having a great game. Now, this year could easily be different, and I am excited to see what is going to happen with Zay Flowers going forward, if he could really develop into being a more reliable asset. Because if he could and does become that, he has league winner written all over him. He clocked in 90% of the snaps with Bateman playing 73% as the second wideout behind him. I do have my doubts with Flowers as a whole, but ultimately in a matchup that's barbecue chicken alert, Zay Flowers feels good as a low-end wide receiver too. Rashad Master Bateman in such a run-heavy offense, if Zay Flowers is really going to be the clear alpha wide receiver, then Bateman will have those random flashes every couple of weeks where he pops off, and this week could definitely be that up against the Browns. But at this point in the season, you don't need to get cute and roll him out there, especially with him being down so low on the touchdown totem pole on this offense. DeAndre Hopkins did find the end zone last week with a beautiful one-handed snag. He played just 35% of the snaps, and I do not expect him ever really becoming more than that in this offense at this point in his career. I will always love DeAndre Hopkins and remember those days in Houston or even early on in Arizona with Kyler Murray, but in 2025, he should not be rostered. For the Cleveland Browns, I'm fine starting both Jerry Jeudy as well as Cedric Tillman. Now, Jerry Jeudy looked okay. We saw a bit of the old Jerry Jeudy where the ball hits him in the hands and then he just drops it, right? Some of those drops that were brutal in Denver, those are starting to rear their ugly head out here with Joe Flacco, and that does definitely scare me. I am fine playing him, but I do really believe that we could easily see Cedric Tillman become the wide receiver one in this offense, like we saw for that 3 stretch of games last season. Jeudy should get fed due to the game script of the team being down and having to chuck the ball a ton late on in the game, so Jeudy is a mid-range wide receiver 3. There is definitely more risk with Tillman, as I could see him fading into irrelevance, but week number 1, he certainly looked like the better of the 2 wide receivers here, 5 of 8 for 52 yards and a touchdown. The team plays heavy 2 tight end sets with Fannin as well as Njoku, so just Jeudy and Tillman are going to be out on the field a ton for the wide receivers. So I don't love having to start Tillman in week number 2, but if you are in a deeper league and want to throw out the upside shot, which I think he does have big upside weekly, he's worth a wide receiver 4 dart throw type of play. With the team using 2 tight end sets so heavily, anyone not named Jerry Jeudy or Tillman will not see the field remotely enough to be considered as a start. Next up, we move to the Jacksonville Jaguars at the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Brian Thomas Jr. was a casualty of Trevor Lawrence blowing more dick than prime Lisa Ann. 1 reception on 7 targets for 11 yards and 1 rush for 9 yards and a touchdown. Trevor Lawrence needs to figure it out quickly before I start to get really mad about Trevor Lawrence. Again, we can't panic after just 1 game, and a lot of people are ready to trade Brian Thomas for a half-eaten bag of potato chips and a used condom after 1 game. But I definitely am concerned. Now, this matchup is definitely a wet dream here for BTJ, and I got him as a top 12 wide receiver. Hopefully, Liam Cohen can figure things out there. Now, Travis Hunter looked good in his rookie debut. Very clear that the team wants to rock with him as a wide receiver, and he may get a few snaps sprinkled in at corner. Now, Liam Cohen did just report that we will see him more at corner this week. He didn't clock in a single time on defense up against the Panthers, so we shall see. He went 6 of 8 for 33 yards. I think brighter days are ahead, and this is a great matchup for his coming out party. But again, with Trevor Lawrence, things don't feel fantastic. He's a high-end wide receiver 3 for me. For Diami Brown, he did outsnap Travis Hunter, but that will flip in due time, in my opinion. Not going to play the wide receiver 3 on an offense with a quarterback that I don't trust at all. For the Cincinnati Bengals, things did not go well at all for Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. They took a massive dump on our chest in Cleveland, honoring the Cleveland Steamers, scoring 10.9 PPR points total between the two. It really felt like a kick to the balls having to start either of those guys in week number 1 because you're obviously going to start them. They got a great matchup, and it just didn't work well at all because the Bengals, as they always do in week 1, just fucking sucked on a fat one. Jamar Chase is still my wide receiver 1, though, in fantasy. We're not going to panic after 1 game. Even if it doesn't work in week 2, guess what? I'm not fucking panicking again because the Bengals, Joe Shiesty, they always figure it out. This matchup up against the Jaguars is finger licking good. Shout out to Colonel Sanders. So Chase Brown is my wide receiver 1 on the week. The bounce back is imminent. Tee-hee. Higgins scored just 6.3 fantasy points with 3 receptions on 4 targets for 33 yards as the wide receiver 60. Higgins was a top 3 round pick for a reason, and that is because he's on a very pass-heavy team with a dog shit defense that leads to them throwing the ball a ton late in games. Plus, Higgins is a great wide receiver. You got to keep your head level and keep firing up T. Higgins, right? Steph Curry wouldn't miss 1-3 and then magically stop shooting, right? So you're not going to stop shooting on T. Higgins. I got him as a high-end wide receiver 2 on the week. Yoshi Voss appears to be the clear wide receiver 3 in Cincinnati, which is cool and all, but with Chase and Higgins being such high-level players, when they're healthy, Yoshi Voss is unrosterable. Next up, we move to game number 4, the New York Football Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. But before we break down this game and the rest of the games in depth at the wide receiver position, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends, our partner over at Underdog. If you're brand new to Underdog and sign up using promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description, you receive a free pick plus a first-time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as if you play a $5 pick'em, you receive an additional $50 in bonus funds. Pick'em on Underdog is incredibly simple. You pick at least 2 players, and you pick the higher or the lower. If both of your picks hit, you get paid. The more picks you add on, the higher the payout will be, so make sure you guys do check that out. Promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. They have a great web app as well as a great app as well, so make sure you guys do check that out. So the New York Giants at the Dallas Cowboys. If Russell Wilson had a functioning brain that wasn't just a monkey hitting thimbles in his skull like that fucking Homer Simpson gif, Malik Neighbors would be fantastic. He would be on top of the world. Malik Neighbors had 5 receptions on 12 targets for 71 yards. He dominates the target share in New York as well as the snap share. He played great last year with worse quarterback play than this, so eventually he's going to break free. He's going to have that big game. He's a clear top 5 must-start wide receiver for me. The rest of the Giants, Mr. Unlimited does love him some Wandale Robinson. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 55 yards. Wandale is still the same guy that he always has been, a guy that sees 8 targets and still manages to get like 10 fucking fantasy points. And frankly, unless my whole team is on the IR or on bye, I am never starting him. Darius Slayton played the most snaps on the team with 97% and had 1 whole target. You definitely don't want to be rostering that. For CeeDee Lamb, if the man had hands last week up against the Eagles, he might have dropped a 40 bomb in Philly. CD has never had an issue with catching the football before, so I'm not really worried remotely about that. You know, it is what it is. And even with him, quote unquote, struggling in week 1, he had 7 receptions on 13 targets for 110 yards. There were other wide receivers like cough, cough, Jamar Chase, who absolutely fisted your fantasy team. So at least even CD having a bad game, he still played great. I expect him to drop that dropping issue quickly. So I love the Lamster up against the G-Men in this week as a must-start top 5 wide receiver. Now, George Pickens stunk it up PU in week number 1. 3 receptions on 4 targets for 30 yards. But I did caution you guys last week and said, hey, this is a tough matchup. Be cautious. Don't just go out there and assume George Pickens is going to go 9 inches deep into that Eagles defense. He played 92% of snaps, though, in his debut with the Cowboys. I felt great about Pickens entering into the season, and I feel the same way as I did then as I do right now. This doesn't feel like the game script where Pickens goes crazy in this game because the Cowboys defense is getting plowed and the Cowboys have to throw a bunch. I don't think that's happening up against the Giants, so he's a mid-range to low-end wide receiver 3 with decent upside just due to the fact that he is a big play wide receiver. For Kevontae Turpin, they've got Tolbert as well. Not starting or rostering either of those guys with Lamb and Pickens healthy. Next up, we got the Chicago Bears at the Detroit Lions, the battle of Ben Johnson. If Caleb Williams hit DJ Moore when he was wide open, he would have strolled into the end zone, and that would have been a great start of the season for us wiki DJ Moore truthers, us DJ Moore enjoyers. But with Caleb Williams, ain't shit easy because it just never goes right. Moore looked great out there, even though the fantasy points don't correlate to that. I feel good about Moore this week after the Lions defense got smacked by the Packers last week. It feels good. So I think that DJ Moore is going to be fine. He did end up getting hurt. And honestly, when he got hit like that, I was like, holy fuck, he might be out for like the next couple of weeks. Again, I'm as much of a doctor as Johnny Sins. And that perfectly proved it because he came back in basically instantly. Caleb concerns me enough not to be all high and mighty on DJ Moore, but he's a low-end wide receiver 2 to high-end wide receiver 3. Rome Odunze saw 9 targets and brought in 6 receptions for 37 yards and a score. He could certainly dethrone DJ Moore as the wide receiver 1 in this offense. All that hype from Ben Johnson all summer has me feeling great about Rome for the season, but this week I still have too many questions to rank him higher than a low-end wide receiver 3. Olamide Zacchaeus may suck away the fun of what could have been a couple of solid games out of Luther Burden, but that's really all he's going to end up doing. There's no need to play him. For the Lions, the offense of the Detroit Lions suffered from Whiskey Dick after losing Ben Johnson. Could the ship completely sink in Detroit? I guess, but ultimately, after one game up against a Packers defense that might just be one of the best in the league, I'm not going to completely run away from a guy like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's going to bounce back. Shit hasn't hit the fan yet. Stay calm and fire up Amon-Ra as a top 8 wide receiver on the week. Jameson Williams was also a casualty of the Lions offense, not doing anything against the Packers. 4 receptions on 5 targets for 23 yards. I didn't love Jameson Williams that much in the summer, and I kind of still feel meh about him right now. He is in that wide receiver 4/flex range, so he's not the most ideal start in my opinion. Isaac Tesla is expected to see more snaps going forward, according to head coach Dan Campbell. He scored 1 touchdown on his lone target. With so many cooks in the kitchen, though, it would really take an injury to someone above him for him to have weekly standalone value where you'd actually trust him enough to start him. Of course, he could still score a touchdown like we saw last week, but you're really never going to see that coming. Next up, we got the New England Patriots, the Deflatriots, at the Miami Dolphins. Now, this is a matchup that will define how my week goes. Will the Dolphins wake the fuck up and beat the Patriots like they always do with Tua? Or are the Dolphins dead on arrival in week number 2? Now, look, maybe I am that Japanese soldier who kept fighting 29 years after World War II, but I won't quit on Tyreek just yet. Will I rank him highly? Fuck no, baby. But I am still going to send him out there one more time. If he screws me over, then I'm done. But he did look open. He looked good. Tua didn't. The ball soared over him, but he did lead the Dolphins wide receiver core. I get it's risky, but as a mid-range wide receiver 3, I think the risk is worth it. Jalen waddled away, waddle. I will throw Tyreek out there because of his usage and his standing in the offense, but with Waddle, the Dolphins offense looking like they are chilling with Oscar the Grouch in a trash can, I will not be taking that risk on Jalen Waddle. The upside is there, of course, but why even fucking bother right now? And then for Malik Washington, he seems to have the wide receiver 3 role on lock here in Miami, but with the Dolphins offense moving the ball at a snail's pace, there's no reason to even roster him. For the Patriots, Kayshon Boutte was the wide receiver 1 on this team on Sunday up against the Raiders. He led the team in snaps, and he also scored the most fantasy points. Wide receiver 17 with 6 receptions on 8 targets for 103 yards. And going back to last season, he has proven to be a favorite target of Drizzy Draco May, the Iceman. Now, he had over 115 receiving yards and a touchdown in his final game of 2024, so maybe something nice is building there. Boutte is far from a must-start and is in the bottom of the barrel range of starters, but with the Dolphins defense getting pounded into submission last week by Daniel Jones, Kayshon Boutte is worth a YOLO wide receiver 4/flex start. For Stephon Diggs, his Patriots debut saw him on a snap restriction with just 41% of the snaps. I expect his snap share to greatly increase as the season goes along as the clear wide receiver 1 in this offense. Even with that small amount of snaps, he had 6 receptions on 7 targets for 57 yards. I still feel more confident in Boutte, but they both sit in the very same range. The Mario time played the second most snaps on the team with 63% and had 2 receptions on 7 targets for -2 yards and a touchdown. With how Boutte played, the Mario is a drop candidate in my opinion. Moving next to the San Francisco 49ers at the New Orleans Saints. It wouldn't be a 49ers season without half of the team already hurt. Ricky Rolex is locked in as a top 24 wide receiver in my rankings going forward. Ricky was 4 of 7 for 108 yards as the wide receiver 20 last week in Seattle. Purdy is banged up, and that does make Ricky more of a risk this week, but assuming Purdy does suit up, I like this spot as a low-end wide receiver too, especially now with Kittle out. The targets are going to be coming hefty for Ricky Pearsall. Juwan Jennings is dealing with a shoulder injury. The wide receiver core is not super deep, so if he does play, I get why someone might talk themselves into starting him. But with Purdy also hurt, and with Ricky playing so well, I would rather just leave him on my bench. For the Saints side of the ball here, Chris Olave, I am not even kidding. I got like 7 separate notifications on my phone that Chris Olave was hurt last week against the Cardinals. This dude is like a punching bag for defenders, and Spencer Rattler doesn't help him one bit. Olave will be a top 36 wide receiver most weeks, so I will mark him as a start. 7 of 13 for 54 yards last week, but man, oh man, does it feel fucking disgusting, especially since, again, he's just like a punching bag. It's like everyone just has a target on his head, like, hey, just fucking smash Chris Olave, hit him as hard as possible, and you get an extra $1 million bounty gate style. I know that's not what's happening, but it's just crazy. Like, and Spencer Rattler doesn't put him in great positions either, so he's a low-end wide receiver 3. I'm Rashid Shaheed. If the Saints had a better quarterback, I would be banging the drum for Shaheed. He sees a high target share and plays a bunch of snaps, but with the quarterback being so bad, and with Shaheed being a big play guy, the big plays won't come as frequently with Olave healthy, and with Rattler being straight up ass. In deeper leagues, I get why you may start him though. Somehow, Brandon Cooks is still in the NFL in 2025. 76% of the snaps in week 1. Again, I don't want anything to do with Spencer Rattler, so I certainly don't want anything to do with the wide receiver 3, who may become the wide receiver 4 if Devon Vele gets more work. Next up, we got game number 8, the Buffalo Bills at the New York Jumbo Jets. Entering into last week, the drum beat for Keon Coleman was at max volume. It was blowing out the speaker because of how loud it was. Discussions of him being the wide receiver 1, and those talks were spot on. 8 of 11 for 112 yards and a tug. Will this prove to be a one-game Linsanity run, or is he actually the number 1 option for Josh Allen, which will be incredibly fruitful? This matchup against the Jets defense does scare me, so he is a wide receiver 4 dart throw type of play. Khalil Shakira. I will say this every week, but Shakira is the perfect bye-week or injury fill-in. He's not going to win you a game, but he's going to score 10 to 14-ish points. He's like premier fucking Wan'Dale Robinson, and he's not going to fuck you over, but in week number 2, with very few injuries around the league and no one on bye, Shakir belongs on the bench. As president of the Joshua Palmer fan club, I was pleased with 5 of 9 for 61 yards as the wide receiver 35. I feel like he will continue to push his way up the team's hierarchy, but I won't get too high on Palmer yet, especially up against that Jets defense. For Garrett Wilson, he popped off in week number 1. The Ohio State connection between him and Fields proved to be incredibly viable. 7 receptions on 9 targets for 95 yards and a touchdown in Fields' revenge game up against the Steelers. I liked Wilson a ton in the summer, and honestly, I feel even better than I did back then. We all know that Fields is in for a potential stinker at any point. You finally buy into Justin Fields, and then he bends you directly over table. But even if that is the case, Wilson is by far and away the clear wide receiver 1 on this team. The Bills just got drop-kicked by Zay Flowers last week, so I like Garrett Wilson as a low-end wide receiver number 1. Josh Reynolds and Tyler Johnson. Reynolds is the clear number 2, playing 97% of the snaps, but he will never see enough targets in an offense that we know wants to run the ball at a high clip to ever start him. Just like how Reynolds is the clear wide receiver 2, Tyler Johnson is the clear number 3, but he had just 2 targets last week, and no one is interested in starting the wide receiver 3 on the fucking Jets. Next up, we move to the Seattle Seahawks at the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, JSN is going to be a very reliable high floor wide receiver weekly for your team. Wide receiver 11 last week with 9 receptions on 13 targets for 124 yards. Even if the Seahawks offense doesn't look great, and even though Sam Darnold isn't really all that good either, JSN is going to see so many targets that it won't end up mattering. Garrett Wilson just dunked his nuts into this defense's mouth last week. So while this isn't the easiest matchup on earth, I feel good about a low-end wide receiver 1 finish. All summer, I talked about Cooper Kupp, and I said it makes no sense that anyone is drafting Cooper Kupp in 2025. The LA Rams got rid of him. They ate all this money. Why would they do that if they thought they still had an ounce of Cooper Kupp left? And what goes on in week 1? 2 receptions on 3 targets for 15 yards up against the Niners. One game he will blow up, and then everyone's going to be hopping on his back. Oh my God, Cooper Kupp's back, baby. I told you, Nick, you fucking idiot. Cooper Kupp's back. And then he's going to score 4 fantasy points the next game. Sam Darnold reeks. You can smell it through the screen, and JSN is the focal piece in this passing offense. Run away from Cooper Kupp. Torrey Horton, here's a who, played 54% of the snaps in his first NFL action. If Kupp truly is washed, then Horton will get more run as the season goes along. But as of right now, with 0 targets in week 1, he should be sitting on your waivers. Aaron Rodgers unloaded the clip onto the Jets last week, and DK Metcalf looked great. Sure, the fantasy production wasn't the best, 4 of 7 for 83 yards, but I feel very good about Metcalf going forward. He is the clear number 1 in this offense, and I like this matchup up against Seattle. He would sit in the mid to high end range of the wide receiver 2s this week. Calvin Austin had the best fantasy day out of the wide receivers in Pittsburgh last week, as he did find the end zone, 4 receptions on 6 targets for 70 yards. Now, if Rodgers can actually keep up this pace, if Rodgers just was cursed by the Jets and he's like an actually good quarterback now, then, you know, a guy like Calvin Austin could be flex worthy. But it's just one game. We can't sip the Kool-Aid just yet. Just like Calvin, Ben Skoranek also found the end zone on his 1 target. He and Roman Wilson both played 10 snaps apiece. I like Roman Wilson more than Ben Skoranek, but at this point, Skoranek's probably more likely to get the 1 target out of the 2, so I got him listed as the wide receiver 3. Ultimately, though, we will not be starting him. Next up, we move to the LA Rams at the Les Titans, the final game in the 1 p.m. slate. If you guys have enjoyed this far, hit that subscribe button down below. Now, Puka Nacua got hit so hard last week that his eye looked like it was bleeding, but that didn't stop Puka Nacua. 10 receptions on 11 targets for 130 yards, straight down the throat, baby. Puka was drafted in the 1st round for a reason, and that is because this dude sucks in targets with the efficiency that Lily Phillips sucks Wang, so he's a must-start wide receiver weekly as a top 10 option, even up against a underrated Titans defense. While the stat sheet wasn't full for Devontae Adams, he was very involved in the offense. In his first start as a Ram, 4 receptions on 8 targets for 51 yards. The big games will come, so you got to keep rocking with him in the wide receiver 2 range, low-end wide receiver 2 for me this week. With Adams and Puka on the squad, there will really never be a scenario where you can talk yourself into starting Tutu Atwell. For the Titans, Calvin Ridley got locked up, don't let me out, and Surtain and friends threw away the key. 4 receptions on 8 targets for 27 yards. But that is exactly what I said was going to happen. I said Calvin Ridley was a sit, and if you had to start him, it was a disaster, a unmitigated disaster. Got to shoot a half-court shot, full-court shot. Shout out to Stephen Curry, and obviously that shot fucking bricked. It didn't even get close to hitting the net, right? I do expect a bounce back here. Now, this isn't the easiest matchup, so this might be a slight bounce back, and then I think the coming out party is in week 3 up against the Colts, so I got him as a low-end wide receiver 3. It is still really early with a rookie quarterback, so if you have Calvin, you should not be panicking. Io Manner's usage was promising in week 1 with 79% of the snaps and 7 targets. Definitely a guy you want to hold on your bench, but not close to being in my lineup. Sadly for Tyler Lockett, his time as a reliable fantasy option has passed him by. Just 1 target last week, only 58% of the snaps. Not worth holding him if for some reason you ended up drafting him because, you know, oh my God, that's Tyler Lockett, I gotta draft him. We move to the 4 p.m. slate of games with the Carolina Panthers at the Arizona Cardinals. Now, Tedero McMillan's rookie debut was shattered like the glass when Stone Cold Steve Austin walks out. due to the fact that Bryce Young really played like he was just ready to get out of there. Like, hey, I got a game, I've got something to do at 4:20, so let me just get out of here with an L. 5 receptions on 9 targets for 68 yards. McMillan should have had a touchdown, but Bryce Young ended up overthrowing him in that spot. Young clearly views T-Mac very highly and will keep feeding him the rock, so things should get better. Again, I'm not going to full on panic after one game, but obviously that week 1 matchup did not look the best for Bryce Young. I think T-Mac will be fine as a low-end wide receiver 2 this week, though. For the rest of the Panthers, Leggett is the clear number 2 weapon behind T-Mac, but with Bryce Young looking like dog shit in week 1, Xavier Leggett cannot be trusted. High motor Hunter Renfrow did at one point in his career on the Raiders look like he was going to have a very long NFL career, and maybe that still is the case, but maybe more as a guy that we don't really see having any fantasy value. For the Arizona Cardinals, Maserati Marvin Harrison Jr. let those good genes go to work. Shout out to Sidney Sweeney, wide receiver 12 on the week in New Orleans with 5 receptions on 6 targets for 71 yards and a touchdown. I still deep down have my worries about Marv, but I've always been a believer in him. Facing the Panthers is a great spot for a back-to-back solid performance. If Trevor Lawrence was able to know how to play football last week, the Carolina Panthers defense would have been fucked. Their head would have been on a spike. So I do feel good about Kyler and Marv here. Even with Kyler sick before the game, Marvin Harrison Jr. still balled, so I love him as a high-end wide receiver too. Any non-Marvin Harrison, Trey McBride, or James Conner pieces in this offense are just not startable. Kyler would be as well. He is startable, but he's just not a skill position player. There is no reliability out of anyone besides them, so I'm not even going to waste my breath speaking about them. Next up, we got the Denver Broncos at the "This is our Colts, this is our team, we bleed blue," after they just ripped the Dolphins a new ass, absolutely absolutely just pounded our blowhole last week. It was a tough scene. So despite Bo Nix doing his best referee impersonation because the dude was blind last week, Sutton still finished as the wide receiver 13 in PPR, 6 receptions on 9 targets for 61 yards and a touchdown. Sutton was one of my favorite players during the fantasy draft process, and based on what I saw last week, definitely confirms my priors. I get that the Colts defense had Tua throwing the ball straight to him, but I think that was more of Tua playing bad versus the Indianapolis Colts having the 85 Bears defense. So I think the Broncos bounce back off of that terrible offensive performance up against the Titans last week. Sutton is in that wide receiver 10 to 16 range weekly, and that's where I got him sitting this week. Marvin Mims had finished hot last season, but that heat did not transfer over to week 1 of this season, and being outsnapped by Troy Franklin is about as gross as it gets. Mims still has that crazy weekly upside, right? He's got that 4.38 speed, but you will never be able to predict his snap share. So I just don't love it. Like, if his snap share isn't going to increase, if we can't push the snap share up, then his ceiling has been hit, in my opinion. His floor is pretty low. So if Franklin shows some consistency as the number 2 wide receiver in Denver, he could become startable. But as of right now, off of 1 week of production where he's the wide receiver 48, you definitely can't start him right now. For the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. had me throwing every single curse word in the book at the television on Sunday as a Dolphins fan. We had Michael Pittman looking like CeeDee Lamb, except for he didn't drop the ball. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 80 yards and a touchdown. Based on a 1-game sample size, he would be the wide receiver 1 on the team. He may end up drawing Surtain in this matchup, and even if he doesn't, it's not like the other corners on this team are terrible. MPJ is in for a real come-down-to-earth showing. We just saw Calvin Ridley get locked up, TK style, by the Broncos. So I would stay away from the Colts wide receivers here. Josh Downs played just 49% of the snaps last week with Alec Pierce playing 79%. Downs is still coming off that hamstring injury, so his role in this offense may be reduced due to that. Again, this Broncos defense scares me in a big way, and Daniel Jones falling off the face of this earth also scares me, so I would just stay away from the Colts wide receivers. Even with all those snaps, Pierce had just 3 targets and 1 catch, 36 yards. You don't need to be starting him. Next up, we move to the Philadelphia Eagles at the Kansas City Chiefs, the Super Bowl rematch. I was far from being an A.J. Brown truther this summer, talking about how I didn't love him due to how much the team was going to run the ball and how it's almost almost like A.J. Brown has to take the backseat in the offense, even though he's one of the best wide receivers in the league. And even though I said all of that, even though I was pretty negative about him, and even though he's not on a single one of my fantasy teams in redraft, I didn't even remotely expect what we saw in that game on Thursday. A.J. Brown had his invisibility cloak on like he was in Harry Potter. 87% of the snaps, he played with 1 reception on 1 target for 8 yards. And based on fantasy points data, the man didn't win a single route. Though, in both Super Bowl matchups against the Chiefs, the man scored a touchdown. So I'm not going to jump ship on A.J. Brown. I got him as a high-end wide receiver 2 on the week. Just like A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith stuffed your fantasy team in a locker up against the Cowboys, 3 for 3 for 16 yards. Smith was another guy that I wasn't really interested in throughout the summer due to how run-heavy the offense is, but on a weekly basis, the upside is still very high, especially since we just saw the Chiefs get a train ran on them by Keenan Allen, QJ, and Ladd McConkey. So Smith will sit in the mid-range wide receiver 3 type of start. For Jahan Dotson, he actually outscored both Brown and Smith last week, which just wouldn't be on anyone's bingo card. 8.9 fantasy points, but the odds of him catching a 51-yard missile from Hurts on a weekly basis is incredibly low, so I would not be rostering him. Hollywood Brown is far from a smash start. The matchup on paper is not good, but with no Rashee Rice and no Xavier Worthy, Hollywood has now become vital in this offense. You ever seen that meme where it's like, when you just became super important at work, that must be how Hollywood Brown is feeling. His utilization will be too high for him not to be start worthy. In fantasy, he was the wide receiver 9 last week, 10 receptions on 16 targets for 99 yards, which will probably be his best game of the year. But if you're struggling at wide receiver, maybe you had Xavier Worthy and you need a spot start, I think he's fine in the low-end wide receiver 3 range. Juju Smith-Schuster, Corvette, went 5 for 5 for 55 yards. Just like Hollywood, Juju has fallen ass backwards into potential fantasy relevance due to the injuries ahead of him. But in a rough matchup, and with my belief that Juju really just ain't that good, I would not be starting him. Tyquan Thornton will get the scraps that Juju and Hollywood don't get, but I'm just not interested in starting the Chiefs wide receiver 3. Next up, we got the Atlanta Falcons at the cold-like Minnesota Vikings on because you waited all day for Sunday night. Now, London is dealing with a shoulder injury, and the expectation is that Drizzy Drake London will play. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm as much of a doctor as Manuel Ferreira, so we're not going to be, going crazy into what my thoughts are on having a fucking shoulder injury. Injury data states that wide receivers see a 28% dip in fantasy points in their first game following an AC joint injury. So, we could see a bit of a fall off here. Ultimately, though, this is a great spot for wide receivers against the Vikings defense. Drizzy Drake London saw 15 targets in week 1. The boy is going to get fed. We might see a dip in production, but the targets may be able to vacate that, so I got him as a low-end wide receiver 1 to high-end wide receiver 2. Darnell, here comes the Mooney, was inactive in week number 1 with the shoulder injury, but the expectation is that he could play this week. But even if he does, even in a matchup that I love, I wouldn't be comfortable playing him. Would rather just see how he performs coming off the injury rather than throwing him out there in my starting lineup. Ray McLeod will every once in a blue moon have a huge game where he randomly gets like 9 or 8 targets, but that just isn't projectable, especially if Mooney and London are both in the lineup and if Pitts is as involved as he was in week 1. So I just don't have any interest in Ray with Drake London playing. For the Minnesota Vikings, even with the Vikings spamming the run button, I think J.J. McCarthy, for like the first half of the game, had like 5 pass attempts. Again, those aren't actual analytics, Nick. He actually threw the ball 7 times in the first half. Whatever it was, he barely threw the ball. Justin Jefferson was still all right, though, and he found the end zone. 4 receptions on 7 targets for 44 yards and that touchdown. I do think things will get better for Justin Jefferson, and I still view him as a top 3 wide receiver in fantasy. This week, up against the Falcons defense that just got body bagged by Emeka Egbuka, I feel good about Jay Jettas inside the top 3. With the Vikings running the ball so much, and without Jordan Addison-Ray, I just really can't play Adam Thielen or Jalen Nailor. I barely knew her. Nailor had the second most snaps with 88%, Thielen 57%. Not dealing with that, and frankly, with Addison coming back soon, Thielen shouldn't even be rostered at this point. So that's just kind of how I feel about Naylor and Thielen. Next up, we move to the first game on Monday Night Football, because why have one shitty game on Monday Night Football when you can have two? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Houston Texans, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Monday. Last week, I said that I had the sneaky suspicion that Emeka Egbuka, or Ooga Booga Booga, as Flight Reacts calls him, could outscore Magic Mike Evans. And that is exactly what happened. Mike still scored 10 points, and compared to most of the high-end wide receivers, he actually put up a big game compared to like Jamar Chase or some of these other guys that you drafted that absolutely sunk your battleship. 5 receptions on 8 targets for 51 yards. Puka just had his way with the Texans defense. Evans should be pretty reliable weekly, so he's just going to slot in as a mid-range wide receiver too. Egbuka's in the same spot as Evans as a mid-range wide receiver too. He is coming off of a matchup where he aired out the Falcons defense as the wide receiver 4, going 4 of 6 for 67 yards and not 1 but 2 tugs in that game, going back for second tugs like his name was Deshaun Watson. Chris Godwin 2.0 is going to smash this year. Like I said all summer long, I love him this week because he makes me happy. Shout out to Simple Jack. Sterling, General Shepard will operate as the wide receiver 3 without McMillan and Chris Godwin. Even with the Buccaneers offense being a wagon, no need to get cute and play Shepard at this point. Nico, cousin, let's go bowling. Collins had me screaming like Anakin after he realized he accidentally killed his wife and now he's Darth Vader, right? 3 receptions on 5 targets for 25 yards against the Rams. I think things will get better. DJ Stroud didn't look great or honestly good at all, but Nico is going to get force-fed the ball, so you're just going to start him. Don't worry about it, sweetheart. Last week, it's okay. Xavier Hutchinson and Justin Watson outsnap Jaden Higgins. Christian Kirk probably won't play on Sunday, so the hierarchy here will probably ice out Jaden Higgins again. I still think Higgins has upside as we get deeper and deeper into the season, but as of right now, and based on how the Texans offense looked on Sunday, you can't make any argument to start any wide receiver not named Nico Collins on this team. Final game here, we move to the final game on Monday night. Can't wait to watch Justin Herbert and Geno Smith battle to the death here at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ladd McConkey scored the 3rd most points out of the wide receivers on the team in Brazil last Friday. 6 of 9 for 74 yards. Maybe he was seeing too many BBLs in the crowd. He wasn't as locked in. It's okay. While some people may panic and be like, oh man, Ladd, oh, that wasn't good. Nick, I told you not to draft Ladd. He's proven to be a safety net for Herbert, so don't fucking panic after one game. Ladd should be the highest-ranked wide receiver on the Chiefs this week. QJ is known to pop off and then disappear for multiple weeks afterward. Ladd was very reliable down the stretch of last season, so I feel good about a bounce back here against the Raiders defense, the Las Vegas Raiders, as a low-end wide receiver 1. I know there's definitely people in the comments, Nick, you didn't do the Raiders thing. I did it for you. Don't worry. I love you. Keenan Allen being back on the Chargers just brings a smile to my face. It brings joy back to my cold heart after the Dolphins ripped that shit out. I felt like the Grinch. 7 receptions on 10 targets for 68 yards and a touchdown as the wide receiver 10. Keenan was very boomer bust last season in Chicago, but in LA, the hope here is that he could be more consistent. I'm still operating under the assumption that Ladd is the guy, so Keenan Allen's more of a low-end wide receiver 3 / high-end wide receiver 2, wide receiver 4 or flex, but he should be pretty reliable. Quentin Johnston, the textbook definition of unreliable. He went out there and played like Randy Moss in Brazil. If you are from Brazil and you've never watched a football game before, and you went to that game, you probably think Quentin Johnston's the best wide receiver in the fucking league. 5 receptions on 7 targets for 79 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he can put up a good game here, then I'll start to be more of a believer. But as of right now, I feel like he is going to fall off the edge of the earth. He is close to the start-worthy range, though, for me. Again, not a complete bust for me. Like, you could still play him if you had to. For the Raiders, Jacoby Myers, in life, a few things are inevitable. Death, taxes, and Jacoby Myers beating his ADP. This dude is underrated every single season, and in week 1, he showed out. Wide receiver 15 in New England with 8 receptions on 10 targets for 97 yards. Jacoby will hardly ever flash enough to, elbow drop the defense and drop a 30-plus point bomb, but he is all reliable for you as a high-end wide receiver 3. Trey Tucker scored the lone touchdown of the wide receiver core for the Raiders. 2 receptions on 3 targets for 54 yards. Tucker does this all the time, but ultimately after one good show, the jolly good show, he goes back to being like the wide receiver 80 next week. So don't worry about it. And Dante Thornton, I'm still positive that he could have a good rookie season. It could be a slow roll. He only played 60% of the snaps. So as of right now, if you want to keep him on your bench, that's fine, but he's just a bench stash. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, make sure you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out Underdog promo code Notorious or by clicking on the link in the video description. Get your free pick. Get that first time deposit offer of up to $1,000 in bonus funds, as well as playing $5 in the pick'em gets you $50 in bonus funds. I love you so much. Have a great one. As always, good boy.